Welcome back. Joining us in studio is Representative Tom Newell, who's been a guest on the show before, but is the House author of the issue that is the largest issue of the session right now, the most talked about. This is Paycheck Protection, House Bill 1749. Why don't you start off by explaining for the viewers what this measure is all about and maybe why you decided to run it this year?
Sure. Well, it's a very simple concept, and simply that I don't believe that the people of Oklahoma should subsidize a group that then turns around and collectively bargains against the people of Oklahoma. So it simply establishes that if you're a state employee getting state dollars, that we will not withhold union dues for that organization.
Well, and it has nothing to do really with union membership, right? I think that's an important point, right? The unions still exist. They still can collect their dues. I mean, what would be different if this bill goes into law?
Well, the only difference would be that the people of Oklahoma would not be subsidizing the union. But you're right. In fact, I have some colleagues that would love to outlaw collective bargaining in general, but this bill does not do that. You're still free to join a union. The unions can still collectively bargain. This simply says that we're not going to help you collect your dues.
A lot of press on this subject as it was moving through the House of Representatives, and then now that it's moved over to the state Senate, and some of the claims or concerns that this is anti-teacher. The lawmakers that are voting for this bill are against public education. What do you have to say to those concerns?
Well, first of all, I'd say that's a spin that the unions are throwing out there. It's not anti-teacher at all. In fact, I would argue that it's pro-teacher, because one of the hardest things that any voluntary organization has to do is to get members to join and to pay dues, and that's in a church or any other organization. What we're doing right now is since the union is going through the state, the union doesn't have to do that one-on-one contact with that member, say, this is what we can offer to you, this is our pitch, would you join our union? This bill would require them to do that. They're going to have to be more responsive to teachers. Teachers will get more bang for their buck from the union, I think, if this bill passes and is signed into law.
And I think, I mean, there is a lot of pushback about this bill. I mean, is it primarily coming from the teachers union? Is that where the pushback is?
That's what I've received from. In fact, just in all honesty, I have not had a lot of feedback from just what I would call the rank and file average teacher out there. It's mostly been from those people who are hardcore union members that are doing the pushback.
Labor Commissioner Mark Costello was on the show a few weeks ago and talked about this issue and how he was involved with Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker doing a recall around this issue somewhat. Are there correlations to what Oklahoma is doing now and what Wisconsin did a few years ago?
Yes, most definitely. You know, and really it goes all the way back to FDR. FDR believed very much in private sector unions, but did not think there should be public sector unions because of the kind of control they would have over government. And we saw that happen throughout decades. Unions were able to control elections, which then got people elected that they wanted elected, which then bargained with them, and so a lot of what we would call the more liberal states that have all kinds of financial problems are states that got in that predicament partly because of the control of public sector unions. And so Governor Walker then began to push back on that. And while we don't have quite the same problem that they have, it's still an issue that I think we need to address.
Well, and it's it's sort of a principle, right? We adopted in Oklahoma right to work in the past, which says people can't be forced to join a union. I mean, is it fair to say this bill would just say to taxpayers they can't be forced to support a union?
Absolutely. This simply says, again, taxpayers don't have to subsidize. And I get a lot of pushback from people saying, well, how is it a subsidy? Well, it's very simple. If I do something for you that would otherwise cost you time and money to do it, then I've subsidized you. And if we're collecting dues for you that would otherwise take you time and money to do, so we're subsidizing you. It's just that simple.
This, I found it interesting looking back that some of the other education issues that are referred to as education reform, education savings account was a measure that you'd talked about before. Some of your colleagues in the House that opposed some of those measures have endorsed this measure. And so I'm fascinated about the conversation about education in the future there and maybe where the separation is with your colleagues.
Well, that's a great point, and it comes back to that point about it being anti-teacher or anti-education. Some of the most pro-education people at the Capitol, former superintendents, former principals, voted for this bill because I think it's just a very common sense bill.
Well, and you know, you mentioned that this is specific to groups that collectively bargain, which really means they're a union. That's kind of the core thing that unions do, and they're very political organizations, right? I mean, this is a taxpayer subsidy to some pretty political groups in Oklahoma. Is that fair to say?
It's very fair to say, and while I stick with the original principle of not subsidizing a union, but you're correct that if many people in Oklahoma knew what some of these unions support, both the public, local level and the national level, they would be appalled that they were subsidizing them.
Can you explain that a little bit?
Well, sure. Trent has written about this some, but Oklahoma is a very pro-life, pro-Second Amendment state, and the NEA and the OEN and some of these other unions support pro-choice and anti-Second Amendment things. Just saw recently that the NEA was funding anti-police rallies in Wisconsin. So a lot of things that I think if the general public knew where those dollars were going, they would be appalled.
We've got about 30 seconds left. I know this bill's about to come up in the Senate. Is there anything you think our viewers should know or you'd like folks to know?
I would just encourage viewers, if they agree with this principle, to contact their senator and let them know that they don't think that they should be subsidizing unions.
Well, folks, we need to take a quick break, but when we return, we're going to go talk to one Oklahoma, a lawmaker who says some of the NSA activity is unconstitutional here in our state. Interesting topic. We'll be right back.